Test, 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 test. Oh, wait, what did you do? What did you do to your knee?
I tore my fifth.
Oh, doing what?
We were on a mission trip and we were roller skating and I was shut down.
On,
I slipped and fell twice.
where was the mission trip?
In San Antonio.
Didn't even get hurt overseas. Well, I'm sorry that that happened to you. Was he messing with you?
I did a stranger. I don't know.
What?
Yeah.
Oh,
All right, everybody.
wow.
Let's go ahead and get started. This is the last impact training of the semester, everybody. Very much sadness. It's likely we'll go ahead and do evangelism next Friday. Last official impact training. So yeah, and then finals are the next week after that. But very excited that our friend Michael Clark was able to join us again this semester. Michael's been a theater teacher for a long time, been in this area for a long time, involved with ISI and other things in this area. So we're really happy and glad to have him here. Let me pray over our time, and then we'll get started. Lord, we want to use our time wisely. God, we want to use it for your glory. And so I thank you for this time in front of us. God, I pray that we would be attentive, God, and just have soft hearts, God, open ears to listen to just how you might shape us and mold us, God. So thank you for Michael. God, I pray that you would speak through him today, and may we just grow closer to you during this time. It's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen. Y'all give it up, Michael.
Before I get up, you're going to get up and move if you're sitting next to someone that you know extremely well or that you just know pretty well. I want you to pair up and sit with somebody that you don't know that well. Okay? Somebody that you don't know that well.
What if we know everybody?
If you're that popular, pick the person you least like. Or someone who doesn't like her, go sit with her and be her partner. There you go. Either way, it exposes the truth. So again, sit with somebody you do not know very well. That will be your partner. All right, so what you're saying is that you least like Ben. Is that correct? He's your partner?
Isaiah, but sure.
Okay, you least like Isaiah. All right. See, it's good. It's good to be honest.
This has nothing to do with the fact that we are both already sitting here.
It probably has everything to do with that thing he did that one time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, man. Really crossed the line.
By the way, Isaiah, that is a perfect reminder that when you get into marriage, that will be used a lot. You know that thing you did that one time? And you just say, sure, I was wrong. Okay. So while you're finishing your lunch, we're going to start out instead of get up and move and everything right away, because you will be moving and you will be doing a lot of interaction in this workshop. First thing is, does anybody know the title of today's impact training? The producer knows the title.
Equipping students to impact the world.
Nope, but a good cheat, a good cheat. Very good. Very good. Say it again. Reasonable response to an atheist. So what you're going to do first is talk to your partner about the word reasonable and come up with a definition. Now, in this, do not ever use your phone as a cheat. As a matter of fact, you're going to find that one of the things we're going to talk about today is the detriment of using your phone when you talk to anyone in not only a witnessing situation, but any situation when you're trying to put them first. Okay? So we'll talk about that in a minute. But only out of you and your partner, just talk for about 30 seconds and come up with a basic definition and maybe some synonyms for the word reasonable. Go.
According to law, it's like an action that someone would take is like usually like the
Okay. All right, so before we start, I like walking around listening to people, and I'm really glad that right before I called time, I was able to hear what not to do. Okay, never ever use the vocabulary term as the definition. Okay, reasonable, able to be reasoned with. Pretty sure your English teacher, even in first grade, didn't like that. Okay? So, somebody give me what you come up with that you think is a reasonable definition of reasonable. Oh, now no one wants to talk because you all use reasonable in your definition.
A justified assessment of an object or idea.
A justified assessment of an object or an idea. That is great if you're speaking to a professor or a robot. But if you're speaking to a person in a casual conversation and you actually want them to talk to you and not wonder what planet you're from, you would need to use regular English. Now, it sounds like I'm being harsh, but what is the title of today's workshop? How to deal with an atheist. That is not the title. But I love, what's your name?
Kyle.
I love what Kyle did, because that's how we think. Is it not? That's how we think. Okay? The reality, who was here for my last workshop? Raise your hand. I want to see how many. Okay, thank you for coming back. Does anybody remember what I said I was prior to being a follower of Jesus?
Atheist.
A teacher. I love it. Before you were a follower of Jesus, you were a teacher. But then you were saved. And now you're on welfare. Okay, so makes me know how you feel about your teachers. I was an atheist, all right? So one of the things I've always maintained is that wherever you were prior to your life in Christ, even if you were a little child, do your best to try to remember what was life prior to that. If you were very young, then you obviously know people who are not in a relationship with God through Christ. Look deeply at their lives. But what the actual problem is usually not them. It's your attitude towards them. Because we say, naturally, how to deal with an atheist, how to deal with a Muslim, how to deal with a Hindu, how to deal with the, I don't know what I am, agnostic. Okay? Or, worse yet, how to deal with my uncle that I only see at Christmas who says he's a Christian and clearly isn't. You see, the reality is we're not dealing with anybody. But that's what society does. Society wants to deal. It deals with problems. We used to be a culture over a century ago that people would gather together and actually deal with a problem. If you look at the culture that came out of the Depression for World War II, the whole nation gathered together with a singular focus. Make sacrifices, deal with this problem, and think of the future generation. Is that our culture today? How do we typically, culturally deal with a problem? Screaming. We yell at it. What else? We try to get rid of it. We avoid it. Let's pretend it's not there.
Leave for whoever's the next person to come in office.
we wait and hope something will be better. Right? That's a really weak hope. Okay? We cancel it. We troll it. We do all these negative things, but we don't actually deal. Because we don't think critically, we don't problem solve, we just act emotionally. So this is a very emotionally charged subject. Because if you're a follower of Jesus, it may be emotional for you. I promise you it's far more emotional for the atheist. Far more. Okay? So let's go back to the word reasonable and talk about it again. And this time, think of reasonable in response to what I'm about to say. You are a hypocrite. You say one thing and you do another. You go to your stupid little lock-ins in high school at a church and you all act like, oh, we're going to have a bunch of Christian fun. But then you're sitting there feeling up a girl under the bleachers. And I saw you do it. And then you, oh, Miss Perfect, go to school and except for the hot summer, you always wear this prim and proper stuff, making yourself look so great. But I know for a fact that she's having sex with my best friend. And she uses Coke because he uses Coke and he gave her some. And I also know that you're a freaking liar because you're my next door neighbor in a duplex and those walls are paper thin. And you're sitting there going to your little church thinking you're all great and your whole family acts like they're good. And you say, oh, your dad is somebody real high in the church. I don't give a flip about your church because I hear what you're really like through those walls. And you're no different than my family. You have the same level of cursing, the same level of screaming, and you may not have the same level of abuse, but you're just as bad as we are. That was my life growing up. That's my attitude towards Christians. Every one of those were actual real experiences. Anytime that I would make a step toward God, Christians would make me walk away. Christians. Not God, Christians. So every one of those and more were actual real experiences for me. So when I say to reasonably talk to someone that may have those experiences, or even one of those would be enough. What does reasonable mean? Talk again. And this time, move a little closer to your partner. Like, scoot. Don't sit on her lap.
Yeah, if you joined in the last 5 minutes, find a partner.
Define reasonable in light of what I talked about.
Okay, group of three, right here.
Yeah, go ahead and make a group of 3 right here.
No, Lucas goes in for test.
There you go. That works. Thank you.
Yes.
Why don't you scoot close together?
No. I don't know. It's just like give a new definition after what he was so like he was talking about
Sorry, I'm running out of options in a relationship.
Okay, let's try it again. Let's start with Miss Prim and Proper, who's a complete fraud. By the way, she already broke up with my friend. She doesn't use drugs anymore, so she's okay now.
so like he's kind of somewhere, but basically we were saying
You chased off your partner?
oh, he's back. Okay. So
He decided to forgive you.
yes. Basically like a logical argument that appeals to common sense.
Okay, a logical argument that appeals to common sense. Was I having common sense when I said what I said? Why? I was emotional. Okay? Raise your hand if you have an atheist in your family. Limit it to your family. Okay. For those of you with your hand raised, you can go ahead and put it down, but only you speak for a second. Describe someone, don't tell me who they are, don't name them, don't say what the relationship is. But if they're a blood relative or they're married into your family and they are an atheist, your hands went up pretty quickly. The question is, describe what their attitude is toward you and toward Christ in general. Go ahead. Nice and loud.
Oh, for everyone?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so he's a very kind of philosophical kind of person, always looking to whatever is the hottest new idea or new way of living. In regards to Christ, he thinks that the whole thing is just kind of bogus, I suppose. Not to say that he has a bad relationship with me per se, though he's kind of like the person like, even if he were to prove without a doubt that Christ existed, I would not care. I would keep doing whatever it is I'm doing.
Okay.
That kind of person.
So he wants to live by his own rules, and don't confuse me with facts.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty much.
Excellent. Someone else?
I'd say my relationship with him, or at least his relationship with the rest of my family, is
Real loud.
pretty good. Sorry.
You can do it, Lucas.
I'd say it's a pretty good relationship, but his outlook on Christ is pretty
And when you're talking to me,
apathetic.
make eye contact with me
Okay.
or with the group when you're talking,
All right.
please.
All right. He's pretty apathetic with his feelings towards Christ, just his salvation overall. It's not something that he really has thought too deeply of, I think, or realizes the weight of his eternity.
Okay, so basically hasn't thought deeply
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of goes day to day.
Right.
All right, so before we continue, notice what I was doing in my corrections. Speak louder, make eye contact. And then what did I do after each of them spoke? I clarified. What I did is restated in my own words what they said. Why?
To establish understanding.
Exactly. Any good teacher knows to do that, so they know that their students actually understand the material. But far more importantly, any good person who says, I care, needs to demonstrate it. If I got an attitude or I'm completely ambivalent about God, doesn't really matter. Because either way, if you said, I care so much about your soul, when I may not even believe I have one, how am I supposed to care that you care? And how am I supposed to have evidence that you care if I don't know you? Or if I only know you when we game together, or I only know you because we went to camp together, or I only know you because we're in class together. You see? So you have to start demonstrating immediately. So make eye contact. Speak up. You may not realize, but when you're talking about things, people naturally do this, when they're talking about things they're uncomfortable with, they get what?
Quieter.
They get quieter. They begin to mumble. They look away. And so you suddenly lack confidence. You've also shown that you have lacked me in the conversation. So make eye contact. Speak up. Be confident. And when you don't know an answer to something, be confident. I don't know that answer. But what you're doing is you're engaging them and you're constantly repeating back what you're hearing to not just say, I'm validating that you said this, but I'm affirming that I'm listening. It doesn't mean I agree with what you said, but I agree that we're both in the conversation. You see that? That's extremely important. It's not just what you say, but how you say it. So continue. Someone else. Someone talk about someone who may be particularly angry. Okay, nice and loud. And this time, say your name and then say it loudly.
My name is Sneha. This person in my life is very angry and stubborn, like hard-hearted towards Christ and towards me because of Christ.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Sneha needs to explain now give one example of how you know there's a stubbornness, that you said stubborn toward you as well as toward Christ. So give an example of how this person was stubborn toward you.
I go home on the weekends. When we talk about spiritual things, it ends up being an argument that doesn't really lead anywhere. We're both just stating our viewpoints back and forth with no actual exchange. It's just, I'm here, you're here, we're talking, but no productive things are going on. There's no conclusion that's reached. So there's a little bit of something that stops us from talking because we know we're just going to state our viewpoints over and over again. And so it's like we avoid conversations now because we know how they're going to go.
Now, I have no idea who Sneha is before today. I have no idea who this person is. But I can guess one thing, and Sneha will tell me if I'm right or wrong. I'm going to bet that this person she's talking about likes to interrupt her. Why? How could I know that? What has interrupting done? And you've all done it when you've been in an argument. Why do you interrupt somebody when you're in an argument?
To assert your authority.
Okay, to assert your authority. What else?
Maybe you're assuming that what they have to say, like, that you have something more important to say.
Okay, don't say maybe. Think of the last argument you ever had. Could have been with a dorm mate, could have been with a parent on the phone, whatever it is. You had an argument. And if you go, whoa, I don't argue very often. Mine was 5 years ago. Well, you probably still remember that argument. And I'm sure that person does too. Okay? So when you interrupt somebody, why do you do it?
Disagree.
Okay, but that's not disagreeing. That's interrupting.
Because maybe what you think that what you have
Why are you
to say.
saying maybe? She said maybe too. Now, here's another thing I'm doing. I'm remembering what somebody said. That's extremely important. If you say, well, I'm not very good at that, you have to learn to be. You have to work at it. I'm really not good at this whole listening thing. I'm usually looking at my phone when someone's talking. Then why are you sitting in this impact class? Well, I'm waiting for them to take a breath so I can say what I need to say. Then why are you here? Well, you see, this revisits the theme from when I taught last time. See the what? What did I say over and over? See, not confident, so they whispered it. All you do is you prove I know what I'm talking about. That's all you do, is you keep going, well, this guy actually knows something, okay? Say it confidently. The person. Thank you. The rest of you are like, I didn't want to make a bad grade. Okay. See the person. And if you say, well, I'm not accustomed to seeing the person, we'll start learning to. Because if you're going to have a conversation with somebody, anybody, okay, here's the reality. There are a lot of verses in the Bible that just jump out at me at times when I'm going through things. But one that gets me a lot of times is the fool says in his heart, there is no God. Well, that's the atheist, and God is saying, you're a fool. A spiritual fool is a person who is not only going to hell, but ignores all the evidence. But that is repeated throughout the Bible about the foolishness of people. But here's the reality. We, whenever we sin, which would be all the time every day, we're fools. We're all the more a fool because we act like there's no God when we rebel. Because we know there's a God. We know his law. We know we're accountable. We know we'll stand before him. We know that the Spirit of God not only has changed our heart, but is created for us a godly conscience. And we still do whatever we want to. So we go la, 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 la. So now we're a greater fool than the person who doesn't even believe there's a God. Because we not only know there's a God, we know God. And he has altered our life. And we still do whatever we want to. But now we're making a choice to rebel. The one who doesn't know God or doesn't know God because they follow a false God is rebelling because that's all they know. You're rebelling out of choice. So, when you lack confidence, when you can't look someone in the eyes, when you don't know how to actively listen, when you can't repeat back in your own words to affirm that you understand what they're saying, and if you didn't clarify it properly, they'll tell you. What you're going to end up in a situation is someone who's interrupting you. Why? Because you lack authority. You haven't proven yourself. There's nothing about you that makes me want to talk to you. The real reason that we typically interrupt somebody is because we know they're right. How dare they state the truth to me? Or, worse yet, we assume they're wrong. So we never listen closely enough. Spouses do it. Parents and kids do it. Siblings do it. Friends do it. And in the end, all we're doing is showing our foolishness, and we're heaping up a bigger pile of resentment. Instead of just being humble enough to say, all right, so what you got to say? And then before I say what I got to say, I'm going to repeat back in my own way what you said so I can make sure I understand it. And if I've got to say, whoa, wait a minute. Do you mind if I repeat back? Because did you just say this? Clearly, I don't like what you just said, but I'm going to repeat it back, okay? I just want to make sure that's what you're saying. And then we keep going. That's an argument, but it's productive. There's nothing wrong with an argument, as long as it's an argument. But if it's just, nope, 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 it's not an argument, okay? That's just playing handball against a brick wall. And you each become the brick wall when it's your turn to talk, okay? So, reasonable. You see, it's very important to understand that. Now, where do I get this whole title? Well, it comes from a book in the Bible called 1 Peter. And there's actually 2 verses that really stand out. And they're about a chapter apart, but man, you put them together, they really make a lot of sense. So I want you to hear it just like I'm saying it to you. And then I want you to think about it and talk about it, okay? Always be ready to give a defense to anyone who asks for a reason for the hope that is in you. But do it with gentleness and respect. And if you're ridiculed for Christ, you're blessed because the Spirit of glory and of God is in you. Now I'm going to say that piece by piece, and I want you to talk about that. Think about that for a second. Okay? Let's start out with the very first argument. Always be ready to give a defense. Okay? Now, whoa, a defense? Why would I have to because always be, let's switch the sentence around. When someone asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you, always be ready to defend yourself. Why shouldn't it just be always be ready to give an answer? Hey, what's up with this Jesus thing? Well, the answer is this. But that's not what the apostle, the ambassador of Jesus, the spokesman for Christ, inspired by God himself, puts. He puts the word apologia, which we translate apology, which in the old way meant a defense, a legal defense. Always give an apologia. Always give a defense. Why would you have to defend yourself? Talk about that. Make sure you're talking to your group. Oh, well, talk to them when he's on this. So do you have a partner?
I don't know if she's coming back or not.
Okay, I'm going to get him. Can I get you to join him? He's without a partner. Thanks. And if your other comes back, you can be a 3.
I would say if we believe what we believe to be true, and if someone has questions or if someone is saying something that's contrary to that truth, should have a defense to that falseness.
Okay. Here we go. There is no evidence for God. If you get the ball or you successfully drop the ball, it's because he was holding the ball. Answer it nice and loud. I just gave you a reason. Defend yourself. There is no evidence for God.
Well, actually, through the person of Jesus Christ, we can see that there is actually a very valid supernatural.
I don't believe in Jesus.
Okay, well, let's look at the history. Most historians and even most popular atheists would even say that he was an actual person. What would you say to that?
Okay, very good. See what he did? He was clearly at the last training. Okay? He said something and he turned around and he asked a question. All right? But what I want is when you hold the ball, try in the most succinct way to give a defense to the answer. Don't turn it back on me. Don't make it into a conversation right now. Because what am I doing? I'm putting you on the spot. So, you're going to, well, I'll do it one more time, and then we'll change it up a bit. Okay? Evolution has proven that there is no God. Nice and loud. I win. I win. You're done. You're toast. It's over. Same thing if we were friends and we're in an argument. Okay? I win. I win. I'm done. I'm out. Going to the max. See ya. See? Do you understand? That's how quickly it's over. Does anybody know the length of time, because you're all going to be going into the work world, right? What is the average length of time that an HR specialist or a hiring specialist looks at your resume online? The average amount of time.
6 seconds?
That's good. That is literally in the middle. It's 5 to 7 seconds. Okay? That's impressive. You stole from him, and then you said it with a question mark. I'm being honest that I stole from him. If you're going to steal from somebody, do it with confidence. 6 seconds. And if it was 6 seconds, no, you're wrong. It was his fault. Okay? Have confidence. By the way, who's more confident when you go into a conversation about spiritual things? You or the unspiritual person? Who? On average? The unspiritual person. Because they are content. They're good. You're the infiltrator. You're the unwelcome conversation. Okay? Raise your hand if you've ever shared the gospel with a family member. Was that fun? Would you describe it as, woohoo, I want to do that again? Or was it like, I'd like a new family, please? Right? It's just the reality. Raise your hand if you've ever lost a friendship over sharing the gospel. Her hand just keeps coming up. That's why she's on crutches. She gets beaten up every time this happens. She'll be a quadriplegic in one day. Oh, I had a lot of good conversations. Now, you may go, oh my word, because I was watching the reactions over here. He's making fun of what's obvious. She's in crutches and she's hurt. Yeah, I'm bringing humor into the obvious. First, state the obvious. The obvious is you're already in a losing battle when you walk into it. If you're walking in trying to convince anybody of anything, you've lost. Okay? If you walk in going, but I know Jesus, and they go, but there is no Jesus, and if there was, he died like 10,000 other people. Big deal. Okay? You've already lost. But if you walk in seeing the person, hearing the person, acknowledging the person, being able to laugh with them, being able to see them and let them know they're being seen, and even if they vomit out filth, anger, retribution, and pain onto you, or they're completely ambivalent and they got no problems at all while they're sitting there vaping their weed, it doesn't really matter because you're the one who does what Peter says. Even if you're ridiculed on behalf of Christ, you're blessed because you have the Spirit of glory and the Spirit of God in you. They don't. That's how you can give a defense. You're defending not your argument. What are you defending? Say it louder. Christ. You're defending Christ, who is God. You're defending God. Well, God doesn't need to be defended. That's what God sent you to do. Okay? The Great Commission is go into the world. And then secondly is to baptize. And thirdly is to make disciples. Well, that second and third part are only after you went. Going is the hard part. Baptizing is pretty easy. Hey, I'm a Christian. All right, let's show the world. Discipling takes some investment, but it's still the easy part. Hey, I'm a Christian. Great, let's grow. Going is the hard part. You got to go into the world. And into the world is literally your classes, your family, this room, and then wherever God takes you in life. That's the world. And whether you're standing in line at Walmart or you're literally in Uganda wondering how on earth you ended up getting there, you're still exactly where God wants you because the Spirit of glory and of God resides in you. You see that? So when a person is acting in a certain way and you can anticipate it, you know a pause like that's going to kill it. So don't pause. You can buy time. Do you remember the question I said? The statement I said? Say it and throw me the ball. Say it nice and loud.
I believe evolution.
No, I didn't say I believe. That's a very good point. But she said evolution proves there is no God. Go ahead and say it nice and loud.
Evolution proves there's no God.
Now my brain's blanking. I don't know what to do. Where'd you hear that? Well, wait a minute. You're supposed to give it defense. I'm buying time so I can sit there and pray and hope my brain starts to engage like it does on an exam. I've been studying for 2 weeks for this exam. I know the answers. I've been sitting there with my study partner going back and forth. I even went old school and made actual cue cards. And I promise you I can ace this. But I don't even know how to answer name right now. I'm totally blanking out. Buy time. Because God's going to work with you. No? Well, where did you hear that? It's a conversation. You see that? So, let's keep trying it. All right? So, evolution proves there is no God.
Where did you hear that? Where did you learn that?
It's on the internet.
Do you trust everything that's on the internet?
Clearly.
Well, I don't.
Okay. See ya.
Well, what's your name?
Well, have a nice, what's your name? See ya, wait a minute. Hey, how's it going? Come up with an argument, say it loud, and throw the ball to somebody. Come up with an argument,
Okay.
say it loud, and throw the ball to somebody. Let's go.
I'm thinking, I'm sorry.
Oh, come on, there's lots of arguments out there.
I don't believe that the tomb is empty. Prove to me that the tomb is empty. Where would you find that? Sorry.
Shoot. Where did you hear that?
I'm going to have to change the rules of this game, apparently.
Conversation.
My other atheist friend, said that one day, and I was like, I kind of agree. I don't.
Stop.
All right.
Would anybody say, my other atheist friend? My other hellbound associates. We're all going to burn and we all believe this. No. How do people talk in real life? Well, everybody. Everybody. By the way, do you realize that the Bible uses that kind of speech? Jesus rides into a donkey into Jerusalem. People are going nuts because they all think he's going to be one thing when clearly he isn't going to meet their expectations for this king. And what do the Pharisees say? All of Jerusalem has come out to see him. Yeah, right. The people laying there in the hospital who are barely alive got up. Right? No. We talk about that because we use hyperbole. We exaggerate. That's going to be in all your conversations. Everybody knows this. All the teachers say it. All the scientists, science has proven, science in all capitals, right? That's how they speak, because that's what they believe, because that's what they've been taught, all right? So what you're going to do now is, I'll take this ball because I'm scared of what you may do with it. Throw it, hit me in the back of the head. I was trying to give it to you. Okay, what I want you to do is you're going to talk only again for about 30 seconds. I'll give you a minute on this. And you're going to come up with a strategy of saying, you're going to come up with 3 arguments that what you feel are popular arguments. They could be subjective, okay? Subjective, emotional, like you heard me say, all Christians are hypocrites. That was my belief system. You know, in old school days when you actually had to go into a paper book dictionary, I really did believe that when I turned to the word hypocrite, I would see it would say, see Christian. Okay, I believe that because that was my experience. So you can come up with a subjective argument against God or a subjective argument against Christianity in particular, but also come up with sounds like a reasonable scientific argument that people do. All right? Take about a minute and come up with 3 of them. The ones that you think or you have heard or you've been challenged with personally. Go.
I think because I feel full, I feel sluggish. No. I think somebody could be like, I don't believe anybody could be raised from the dead.
What I've heard a lot is that the Bible can be mistranslated to what people think is true. That one's pretty
This is group of 3. This is group of 3.
I've tried it out. I've tried the whole Christian
Like a good one.
Well, it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to technically be logical. It's not objective. It's subjective. Something based off their experience. I've heard a lot. So that could also
All right,
be
and pause.
people.
Now, here are the categories of the arguments that you'll typically find. We start with the moral argument, okay? The moral argument. These are arguments that typically is a defense of Christianity, but also an argument from evolution, an evolutionary perspective, or an atheistic, materialistic perspective. These are the big categories, okay? The moral argument. Okay, let's understand there's a difference between the word moral and ethics. Morality and ethics are not synonyms. So the ethics of a society is the oughtness. It's what societies and cultures say. This is what you ought to do. Those are our laws. Every society creates a set of laws, and those laws are meant to be followed. And typically in any society, no matter how corrupt it's been, the reality is that those laws started from a place of the government protecting its citizens and keeping order instead of chaos. So it's a sense of oughtness. Morals are the isness of individuals. It's what you actually do. And all you have to do is be around a little toddler to know the difference between ethics and morals. Don't do that. That's like saying to the child, do that. Because that's what they hear. Don't touch that. Oh, you said to touch that now? That's the reality. So, the moral argument. The Bible-believing side says all humans are conceived how? Say it out loud. In sin. We are morally corrupt. 100%. It says it so much through the Old Testament, but then Paul in Romans really just brings it all together in a very simple way in Romans chapter 1. There is not one who follows God. No, not one. And he actually goes through the spiritual history of man, right? And he talks about, here's where they were, but then their minds were completely darkened. And then what happens? They start worshiping things they made with their hands. They start looking at creation saying, let's worship that. And if there had been phones, he would have said they worship that. The reality is that everybody is spiritually darkened. But he noticed he kept saying they, because his audience is the church. And then he goes on to say, and you were once like this. See, so there's the moral argument. From the Christian side, the whole world is morally corrupt. It doesn't matter what your ethics are. The reality is that you can't follow them. Not perfectly. And then try to do the ethical standard that we call, let's see, what is it? Oh yeah, the 10 Commandments. Let's see if you can follow that for 5 seconds. All 10. Okay? But the atheistic side is, well, we have evolved. We have a moral gene. We find that society really does benefit from peace and order and community service and volunteerism. That all sounds well and nice until you go back and you read Darwin, the father of modern evolution. What's Darwin say? Survival of the fittest. Marx wrote an entire political theory based on that understanding. A political and an economic theory. Hitler passed out Nietzsche's books to his growing Nazi regime because Nietzsche took that to its logical conclusion. So they took the basic understanding of survival of the fittest and said, handicap, kill them. We don't like them, they're Jews, kill them. You don't fit, kill them. Take their stuff. Grow, survive. So we become the Ubermensch, the Supermen. That's survival of the fittest. So you can have someone on the Bible side making their argument, and we rely on the Bible. And if someone goes to the next argument where the Bible contradicts itself, you deal with that only after you've dealt with the first issue. Don't ever let someone take you to a second issue until you dealt with the first. Why? Because the first issue is the most common issue. But most people don't start with, well, the moral argument from my perspective as an atheist is, no, they say something like this, well, if there's a good God, he wouldn't let bad things happen to good people. That's a moral argument. You have to show them there are no such thing as what kind of people? There are no good people. But he lets children die. Yes, he does, because there are no good people. Well, you say that, you need to hear the gospel in order to be saved. And what about that innocent native who's in a primitive society and has never heard the gospel? It'd be great if there was such a thing as an innocent native, but there isn't. You see, you have to go to that, and then you take them to their logical conclusion. Say, well, wait a minute. You're saying evolution is one thing and ends up here, but the ones who actually wrote and created the foundation for your belief system said it ends up here. How did you get over here? That sounds more Christian when they ended up over here, which is nothing like Christianity. Take them to their logical conclusion. Talk that through. And if they get frustrated and want to move on, say, wait a minute. You know what is so great about this conversation? It's we're having a conversation. And I don't know you that well, but I certainly want to value you. And you made an argument, and it's just not fair to you, and quite honestly to me, if we move on. But I promise you that given the time and everything, we'll get to your next point, but let's talk about this first. If they don't want to and the conversation's over, you haven't lost anything. Because if you're ridiculed for the name of Christ, you are what?
Blessed.
You're blessed. Don't be derailed by someone who interrupts. Because you all do it. Be in their shoes. be in their skin. Okay? Yeah, as I walked around, I heard some of you making a moral argument. Another argument is the evolutionary model, the materialistic worldview, that says ultimately the universe came from a big bang, and all the material of the universe was in a singularity, and then one day on a Tuesday afternoon at 3 p.m., it went boom. And you say, hey, I agree with you. You want to derail somebody? Agree with them. I agree with you. That one day on a Tuesday afternoon, but it was actually 3:30 p.m., everything went boom. But the question is, where did that stuff from the material come from? Oh, well, you know, it was I don't know. It was just there. It was eternal. It was always there. Okay? So you believe that the universe is eternal? Sure. Well, let's talk about that. Where in the universe do you see anything eternal? What they're doing is they're doing the same thing that the ancient Greeks, including Plato and his star student Aristotle, struggled with. And both ended up with a model of a god because they knew that nothing produces what?
Something.
No, it doesn't. Nothing produces nothing. So you want to get into somebody's head? Literally get into their head. Describe nothing. Go ahead.
It's the absence of something?
No, because the absence of something would still be something.
So does nothing really exist?
Well, clearly it does because we have a word to describe it. You see the problem with that? And if somebody's like, "Ooh, I don't understand." Okay, well, I appreciate you saying that you don't understand. Be polite. Why? Always be ready to give a defense for a person who asks the hope, a reason for the hope that lies in you, with what and what? Gentleness and respect. Be gentle. This is not gentle. Hey, you ask a question, don't move on, butthead. And may you be blessed. Okay? Because you will get upset. Because if you become attacked, guess what? They're actually talking to you. If you become attacked with a little bit of cursing and you're all this, and then they walk off because they threw a meme out at you, I mean, nothing changed. The needle didn't move, so move on. But if you're in a conversation, they start getting upset, is it any different than when you're talking to your mom and you've done something wrong and you don't believe for a second because you're 16 and you know everything on the planet? You're smarter than everyone who ever existed, especially your mom, and then your mom is pointing out that you're wrong, and you have a mom who's screaming and yelling at you? That's the mom you want. Because you're, "Ah!" and you both walk off going, "I win." But if you've got the most horrible mother on the planet who's calm and patient and smiles at you like you poor child and lets you speak what you think is true and then shows you how foolish you are, your mom not only won, but through her gentleness and her respect, she won. And very few people do that. You see that? So, you're gentle. You're respectful. Respectful doesn't mean I believe you, I agree with you. It means I value you. That's all it means. You know, there's a difference between honor and respect. Honor is respecting a position. But respect is built in relationship. The second you start talking, you're building a relationship. Because you're trying to point them to the greatest relationship in existence. You got to start somewhere. So, they start getting angry. Hey, I appreciate your anger. Why? Because your anger shows authenticity. Too many people just scream and yell and troll and cancel. But you're being authentically mad. Do you even know why you're getting angry right now? So do you see? Have a conversation. See the person. So you get this argument, and you could say something like, I agree with you. It all started. But then you can start, if they want to get scientific on it, don't go scientific if they're not, by the way. Don't start throwing science facts at them. That's why earlier when I was making examples saying that's great if you're talking to a robot, okay, or to a professor. The reality is that not everybody wants to go there. If they start subjective, stay where?
Subjective.
Stay subjective but reasonable, defensive, logical, without you getting emotional with them. And if you find that they started out as your enemy and they end up crying, don't suddenly hug them and freak them out. Thank them for the tears, because they may not even know where they're coming from. That happened to me. It's happened to me several times throughout my life. Somebody who was extremely resistant, but was still willing to talk. And seemingly out of nowhere, tears started coming. And then they're talking about their personal life. And I don't even know how it's all connected. But then I say, let's go back to the psalm. The fool says in his heart, there is no God. But that fool is a person made in the image of God who has to live in a fallen world with lots of pain. And that fool probably had a lot of bad things happen to him, to where he got to that point where he said, life isn't the way it's supposed to be. I suffered and I don't think it's fair, and I see bad things every day, and I'm not one of the elite who get it all, so there can't be a God. That's anger. That's pain. That's frustration. No one gets to that place of foolishness just because they awoke one day and said there is no God. It was God didn't do his job in defending himself. Here's the worst part about it, and it is the worst part. God defends himself through you. You're his hands, you're his feet, and you're his mouthpiece. Every eye contact you make, every time you reply back, every time that you give a smile in the face of someone who wants to make you frown, every time that you walk the extra mile with them, every time you see who otherwise has been unseeable, you are literally the one who takes on flesh and blood and reality of Christ to them. So all of these things I was talking about, all these little conversations you've had, all the little arguments you've made, and as I walked around and I heard all of you were coming up with some very solid, subjective, and factual arguments. Understand there are 1,000 more. And I could go on for the next hour making the major arguments and some responses to those. But you have to do the part of giving a defense. Remember, they want a reason. They won't use the word, tell me why you follow Jesus. That's extremely rare. It's more of, you're an idiot. That's the same thing. You're a hypocrite. Well, you're one of those flat earthers. By the way, if you are a flat earther, leave the room. Okay? The reality is this. To give a defense is to be prepared. That takes study. The only way I could walk in here and even start to give you a taste of all of the major arguments is through study. But I'm in school, I don't have time to study. But you're also in school at an impact training in order to impact your school. Really? When's the last time you really studied the Bible? Well, I opened it once last week. That's not what I said. And that's the same thing. See the person, be heard, be confident, ask questions, state things back, validate what they say. And when they say something that you genuinely can't answer, let them know, I genuinely can't answer. But would it be okay with you if I took some time, can we trade information, whatever, and let me follow up when I can answer? And I'll try to do it pretty quickly. What's a good day for you? And do you have anything else that maybe I can answer? Because the argument is never, is there no God? The argument is, do you have anything that's evidence that the Spirit of God is working on your heart to consider him? And you and I never know where the Spirit who resides in us is also working and massaging that person's heart. We just don't know. We were simply told to go. And we go, and we let God do what he always does. He does the miracles. Embrace him in that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Such good words. One of the main reasons, y'all tell me if you agree with this, one of the main reasons that somebody doesn't share the gospel is the fear of not knowing what to say. So much of what you said today, I think, helps us deal with that. It's like, what if somebody asks a question that I don't know the answer to? That's a huge fear for a lot of people. That's why being curious, asking questions is super good, just to gain understanding of what they're believing, what they're trying to say. And then what you said there at the end is gold. Like, yeah, if you genuinely don't know something, that's okay. Say, hey, that's an interesting thing. Let's meet up later and talk about that. I want to look into that a little bit. So seriously, that really does diffuse this fear of I don't know what to say, therefore I will not go. So yeah, I love it. Let me pray for us, and then we will take about 90 seconds, and then we'll pair up over there and go out on campus. So, Lord, you're at work in many, many places that we're not even aware of. But God, I just pray that we would all just be attentive to how you're working in our hearts. God, how are you prompting us? How are you molding us and forming us to be faithful? God, may we have just a correct view of how you work and what you called us to do. I pray that we would be faithful in following in the footsteps of Jesus, God, who loved people, who extended himself, God, who